So let's look at what's required in order to create an alert dialog for our protein tracker application. So in this instance, what we're going to try and do is go ahead and create an alert dialog that will show up when the user wants to reset the protein count that's been tracked for the day. So if you remember in our protein tracker application, actually let's just bring up the emulator. I've got it running. You can see we've got the protein consumed here and we can enter it. And we don't have this functional right now, but let's go ahead and pretend like we do, and then we'll create a reset button down here at the bottom, and then when they click this reset button, it'll let them reset. We'll pop up a dialog here, an alert dialog that says, are you sure you want to reset the protein that was consumed for the day, yes or no? So let's go ahead and look at what we need to do that. So the first thing we'll want to do is in our main XML layout file, we're going to need to create another linear layout here below this one that we have. So I'll go ahead and do that. It's easier to just drag it and drop it over here, because then it's going to create the ID and everything for us. And what we're going to want to do here is make it so that the layout height, instead of wrap content, let's do fill parent. And then we'll take a look and see. You can see now it's filling this whole remaining space, which is good because now we can put a button here and we can have the button fill the bottom. So what we need to do here is set the gravity. So if you recall the gravity for Android, what it will do is determine what the elements inside it. It's like its own gravity inside of anything that's inside it will have that type of gravity. So I'm going to say gravity bottom here. And what that will do is cause anything we put inside this layout to be sucked down towards the bottom. And in this case, we'll add a button here. And again, it's easier to do this with the graphical layout. So I can just drop a button here, and immediately you can see it just went right down to the bottom. And then let's make this button, the width on this, we'll make it be fill parent. And then we should get the effect we're looking for here. So there you go. We've got a button at the bottom, and we'll name this button reset, and we'll give the ID for the button reset button. Okay, so now we're set up, and all we need to do is then hook this button up to a dialog. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll go into our main activity, and we're going to hook this up just like we had hooked up the previous button. In fact, we'll just utilize some of this code here. We're just going to take this line and we're going to modify this. Instead, we're going to call this reset button. And then this is going to be r.id.reset button. Okay, so that will get us the reference, and then we're going to do reset button dot set on click listener, and we'll make this the reset button listener here, and then we can just go ahead and let Eclipse create this field for us, and then we'll just do a new. And this is one of those things, really, it's a lot different than C#, but you kind of get used to it. And as I go back to C#, I kind of miss being able to do stuff like this, which is kind of neat, especially in Eclipse, where it's just going to auto-create that for you and then auto-fill this in, and you're doing this anonymous override. It actually is, at first it was really rough for me, but that's actually really smooth. So on our on-click, now what we're going to do here is we're going to need to basically register this dialog, or we're going to call show dialog, and we need to have a ID that we're going to pass it. So what I'm going to do here is first I'm going to actually declare a variable here that we're going to use to hold the dialog's ID. So we're just going to call this reset dialog, and we'll set it equal to 0, and that'll be final because it's not going to change. And then on this on click, all we're going to do is call show dialog, and then remember how we had talked about letting Android handle this. We're going to let Android handle this. So if you recall, when we call show dialog, now Android is going to call a special method, which will be the onCreateDialog. So we need to provide an implementation for that, and then it's going to tell us what ID that we want to show the or create the dialog for, and then we're going to based on that choose which dialog. Now we only have one here, so it's going to be pretty easy, but let's look at how to do that. So I'm just going to provide an implementation for onCreateDialog. Create dialog. And you can see here we've got to fill this in, and we'll need to return a dialog. So we're going to get this ID, and we're going to do kind of like what we did with the menus. We're just going to switch on this ID, and then we're looking for the case of reset dialog. And when we have identified our dialog, then now this is where we're actually going to create the dialog. And what we're going to use is that alert builder dialog or alert builder that we had talked about before. And this is going to make it fairly easy for us to create this dialog. So the first thing I'm going to do is declare an alert dialog builder. It actually is an inner class of the alert dialog class. So if we do alert dialog.builder, I can declare my builder here, and then it'll be a new builder. And this takes the context, which remember activity is, it qualifies as a context. So we can just pass in this, import this, Control-Shift-O, alert dialog builder. Okay, so now we have our builder, and then we're going to just return what's going to come back from the builder. I'll go ahead and do a return here. This is kind of the syntax that you'll usually see. You could, of course, put this in a variable, but in this case, we're just going to string together, just like it's a builder pattern. So we're going to string together the things that we're going to do. So I'm going to put each dot on a separate line, and we're going to do like set the message, and we're going to set this to do, or let's say, are you sure you want to reset the protein count? Okay, so now that we've set the message, we're going to go ahead and set a negative button here. And for our negative button, we're going to call it no. And then we need an on-click listener here that will be the on-click listener of the, basically the same on-click listener for the dialog interface. So we'll do a new dialog interface on-click listener. And since there's already an on-click listener imported that we have for the button listener, we're going to need to specifically specify here that this is a dialog interface.onClick listener because it has a different signature. I'll just go ahead and fix this up so we get rid of this error for now. I'll just make it so we do create, and then I'll explain that later. But for now, what we're going to do is hook this on click up so that we're just going to show a message instead of doing something here. So let's do a toast dot make text. And then for the context, remember, so we're inside of this anonymous class, so we need to reference the outside class. So we need to do main activity dot this to grab the main activity. If we just did this here, it would be that is this class, which is not what we want. So then I'm going to say here, did not reset, and then we'll make the duration 5, and then we'll go ahead and show that. So that'll show that toast message when we click, the user clicks no here. And that's it for setting the negative button. Now, let's go ahead and set a positive button. And we're going to just do that the same way. We'll say yes, and then I'm going to actually just copy this code and change it to save some time. And then we just need to make sure that we change this to did reset, and I'll make the reset big. So now, if we reset it, if we click no, it'll show do not reset. If we click yes, it's going to say did reset. We're going to expect 2 buttons to be created here, and then I've called this .create method at the end, and that's what you do when you're done with the builder. So you can build up your alert dialog using all of these methods. There's some more methods that we could use here. Just take a look at it real quick. There's some methods for setting whether or not it can be cancelable. Custom title, you could set an icon, and the multi-choices, all these single choice. So you set up all your options, and then you call .create at the end, and then that will actually return to you an alert dialog, and then we're going to go ahead and return that alert dialog. And then we still have the option of if we didn't hit anything on our switch, what would happen. So we're just going to return null here. We know we're only going to call this when we actually have a dialog, so we know it's always going to be this reset dialog. But normally you might have several different dialogs here, and that's if you actually had different ones, you would put them all in this switch statement, and then whichever one gets shown, it would create the correct dialog. I also like to take this whole code that creates a dialog and put this into its own method, like build whatever dialog. It makes it a little bit cleaner. So let's go ahead and run this and make sure that this worked. Okay, so if we take a look at our application here, you can see we've got our reset button. That's very nice. And I'm clicking the reset button. Now we get the message, are you sure you want to reset the protein count? So if we click no, did not reset. And if we click yes, we get the did reset. So there you have it. We have our alert dialog working here. And you can see we don't have a title or an icon or anything. We could have customized it that way. But I'm going to show you one customization that is a little more interesting. I'm going to show you how to make a multiple choice here. So let's go ahead and look at how to do that real quick. Alright, now one of the things that we'll need to do in order to set multi-choice options is we have to get rid of this set message. We can actually change this to the title if we wanted to, and then we can see how a title works. But you can't have a message and have the multi-choices. For some reason, it'll just display a blank screen on the dialog. So what we'll need to do here is we'll say set multi-choice items, and you could do set single select if you wanted radio buttons. And we'll do a new char sequence, which is basically just an array of strings. And we'll do this as, we'll just make the choices A, B, or C, just to make it easy. And then here we pass in what the values should default. So in this case, we'll do a new Boolean. Need to end that one. Okay. We'll do a new Boolean array, and this we'll just do. We'll set them all to default to false. And then we're not going to set up a non-click listener here, so I'm just going to put null. But you could set up a click listener so that you could respond to the multi-choice events. So let's go ahead and save that and run this and see what that looks like. Okay, so we have our protein tracker app. I'm going to hit the reset button. And now you can see we have A, B, C, and we can check these, and then we still have our yes or no. And that's it for the alert dialogs.